And when Coach Harbaugh first got in there, everyone says, why, how was he able to turn the program around? There's like little moments I can point to where you can see why he's such a great leader, which is a head coach. And like a few practices into spring ball, he's like, what's funny about a lot of guys is they say they want to play in the NFL, but they go through all their 4 years doing what everybody else is going to do. And then when it's combine time, then they eat right. Then they sleep. Then they do extra work. Then they study more. And they commit to four months of that, and they make all this progress. He's like, the ones that will play a long time will take that 4-month principles and apply it for your entire career. And I was like, oh my gosh, that makes complete sense.
Izzy, this morning you said something that I've heard you say so many times, and it's around the significance of knowing what you love and then creating a vision for your life. Yeah. Can you unpack that more?
Well, I think, as I've gone through my journey, self-awareness is like such a keystone component that we all need to have. One of my coaches, Rod Marinelli, used to call it the toolkit, right? Like, what's in your toolkit? What's the things that you have access to that you could utilize when you're going through a challenge, when you're facing something, where you're trying to achieve a goal, whatever it is. Like, the toolkit is your place you go to. Like, what do I have to overcome or solve this problem? Self-awareness is like the number one tool I believe we all should have, right? And what that means is you understand your gifts, your strengths, you understand your weaknesses, right? You understand the things that you love, the things that you don't love. You have a really great sense of like dynamically who you are and like how you can contribute to anything, right? And then once you know that, setting the vision of what you want to do with that gift, where do you want to go with that gift? Is it an athlete? Well, to be an athlete, elite, for the most part, you have to have some sort of success academically, right? You can't flunk out of school and be able to compete with all these guys that are going to these top schools. Like, you have to at least be able to get C's in school. Like, that's a part of the roadmap, right? You have to be able to perform at a high level. You have to be able to perform under pressure. You have to be able to, like, all these things. Every destination has a different set of paths that it'll take you down. And, knowing your strengths, your skills, having that clear vision. And then I think the final piece is ultimately knowing what's required, knowing what to do. And part B of that is doing what you know, which I think where a lot of guys fail, right? It's like, you got to show up and work out and all the stuff you need to be to be successful as an athlete. And a lot of guys sometimes will choose to live the good life and be out there not executing the plan on the highest level. And yeah, you feel sometimes like, I can sacrifice or maybe take a little time off or XYZ. That makes a difference as you continue to not stay consistent, right? You got to know what to do and do what you know. The guys who do that second piece are the great ones, right? They show up consistently and they just do it, regardless of how they feel, regardless of situation externally. They just do it. They just they continue to swing the axe. And I think, for all of us, being able to analyze self, have a clear vision of where you're trying to going, know the things that need to be done, and then be consistent in doing those things will make you a game changer in anything that you're trying to achieve.
Yeah, I love the way you organize those 4 points, and it immediately took me to some of the commentary you shared around, if you have any desire to be great, extra is required.
Yeah.
And I love the analogy you painted around what it looks like to be average. And how common that is. Can you talk about that a little bit, Jake?
Yeah, I almost want to build off what you're saying too, because I do think when you talk about having a vision, like that's the first step, because you have to differentiate between, do I really, really want this, or do I like the idea of this? And I think that's the beginning of it, because starting from square one, it's easy to say you want this because it gives you this. In the NFL, I had a dream since I was a middle schooler. I wanted to play in the NFL. Then I go to the vision. Then I realize to be honest, I'm a pretty average athlete. I'm not running a 4.5 40. My 225, I'm not putting up, 20 plus reps. I'm not jumping 40 inches. So to me, I knew I had to do extra. It becomes an equation. If that's something I really want, then I know this is what I'll have to do beyond just the bare minimum. And examples that come to mind is, we would call it Swole School Saturday in college. You work hard Monday through Friday. You're conditioning and you're lifting. The bed's real comfortable Saturday morning, especially in Ann Arbor when it's snowing and I don't have a car and I got to walk or drive my moped. But did I commit to going in there and doing extra work and catching balls and working on my routes? Yes, I did. That's a small price to pay. If you have big goals, then what is a big price to pay? If you and if you can differentiate it, if you genuinely want it, there is no price that's too big to pay. And it really just comes down to that. And it's okay, if you wanted to be average in a certain area, if you're comfortable with that, sure, I won't judge you, but that's not for me.
Yeah, talk about that, though. If you remember what you mentioned this morning, is how often young student athletes don't realize that sleeping well, eating well, going to training and going to practice simply puts you on the level playing field of average people.
Yeah.
Because that's the basic thing that everyone does. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, Coach Harbaugh, when Coach Harbaugh first got in there, everyone says, how was he able to turn the program around? There's little moments I can point to where you can see why he's such a great leader, which is a head coach. And a few practices into spring ball, he's like, what's funny about a lot of guys is they say they want to play in the NFL. But they go through all their 4 years doing what everybody else is going to do. And then when it's combine time, then they eat right. Then they sleep. Then they do extra work. Then they study more. And they commit to four months of that and they make all this progress. He's like, the ones that will play a long time will take that 4-month principles and apply it for your entire career. And I was like, oh my gosh, that makes complete sense. To me, those principles apply even to this day. I have no need, my career has nothing to do with staying in shape, but how you do one thing is how you do everything. Even I think of another example, like Peyton Manning. I heard stories about him, how he would know the janitors by name. He would greet the cooks by name. He's Peyton Manning. He doesn't need to do that. But it's excellence in every single thing you do. You don't turn it off and turn it on. You're either excellent or not. Again, and you can change who you are at any point in time, right? If you're average right now,
yeah, love that.
You act in a way and you think in a way, and when you look in the mirror, you view yourself in a way to say, this is who I choose to be today, and you make the choices necessary today, tomorrow, and all of a sudden you're stacking evidence to where you are exactly who you said you were. I believe that anyone could do anything. I do. I really believe. Your story when you're sharing today, what would be my excuse or someone's excuse? I believe that to be true.
I love what you said when you said stacking evidence. And the reason it really connects with me is because it's something else that we were talking about this morning, that success leaves clues, right? Mm-hmm. Success leaves clues, so that, if the good thing I think for our generations is that there's enough wildly successful people ahead of us documented in history. Right. So there's a lot of clues. There are not a lot of firsts of something in this time in the world, right? Mm-hmm. Can each of you maybe think back to the first person that you studied intimately and became borderline obsessed with that left many clues for the path and the roadmap, Izzy, that you said that you would take on in your life?
Yeah, I think for me, when I think of sports figures that I wanted to emulate or be like, obviously Michael Jordan. I think for a lot of folks in my generation, he was the guy, right? You talk about just mindset over everything. And I think I always worked to emulate that, where, if you're strong here mentally everything else follows. The body follows, right? I remember, running sprints upon sprints upon sprints, and guys would be falling off or throwing up. And, regardless of how many sprints you ask me to run, I'm going to run them. Why? Because it's like here. And I know Michael Jordan would never let anybody beat him, right? In anything, right? So it's like, as I was coming up, that mindset of like never letting anyone outwork me or letting anyone beat me. Yeah. Even when I got to the league, when we ran sprints, forget it. I would not allow myself to be beat, just because that was what I believed was like the mindset of a champion, right? It's setting the standard, and you don't take days off. It's like if the show is on, whether it's practice or the actual show on Sunday, yes, right? It's who you are. To what Jake said earlier, it's like this is who I am, right? And what's amazing is we define that. Like I defined that for myself. It's like, listen, I don't care what it is. When we run sprints, there's one person that's going to come first. It's going to be me, right? And I think in addition to that, I'd look to my father as someone that, although he wasn't an athlete, he's a figure of like how a man should work, right? The guy was about working and executing his vision, right? And a family of 6, it was on his back, and just to watch how he just got after it. He was no nonsense. He was tough on me as the first son in the family, but I from him just learned that no excuses, right? You never complain about anything. It's just like, regardless of the darkest days, you get up and you still got to produce, and you still got to execute, and, nobody's going to feel sorry for you, right? At the end of the day, you got to feed the family, you got to get things done. And so I think with that mindset of not letting anyone outwork me, and then also understanding that, there's no one that's gonna save or rescue me, right? It's like at the end of the day, I've got to put in the work to save myself. That those two things, I think, from my father and Michael Jordan were really key lessons.
There's there's something freeing about that too. Like even if you're like struggling or spiraling down, you're responsible for that. Yeah. But in that comment is, that means I could be responsible for turning this thing around. Yes. I'm responsible for everything in my life. That's right. My gosh, I can control that. I love the dynamic of what you said about how you can talk about Michael Jordan and an athlete, but you also talk about your dad, because at the end of the day, like there's, like to your point, there's nothing new under the sun. There's principles that just apply towards achieving great things. Mm-hmm. And you can see that in anything, I think about my dad. He never missed a single game I played in my life. Never missed a single game. I don't know how he did it, had to be in so many places at once. Running a business, providing for children, providing for his wife, taking care of his siblings. Never heard him complain once either. Because it's just, that's what's required. Yeah. As far as athletes goes, I was a freshman in Michigan watching Tony Gonzalez.
Oh yeah.
And
wow.
The higher up you go, you're chasing, like you're trying to shave little percentage points. From middle school to junior high, you're going to make a big jump. Then the jump gets a little bit tighter to high school and a little bit tighter to college. And then what separates the great ones in the NFL, it's like a very small percentage point. And, if I'm running an out route, you've probably seen a playbook. You run 10 yards, then you break it 90 degrees out towards the sideline. What Tony Gonzalez would do, instead of at a 90-degree angle, we call it a negative angle. He would reduce backwards, so his angle was back towards the quarterback. 5% difference, 5-degree difference. But what happens is, if the DB's on top of you and you go out, he can undercut you. If you're working back towards the quarterback, that's a longer distance he has to travel to undercut you. In the NFL, that 2-degree difference is the difference between a catch and an interception, which is the difference between a win and a loss, which is the difference in you being re-signed or not, or a Super Bowl or not. And that applies to literally everything. Wow. Can you stay after your lift for 10 minutes? Well, what's 10 minutes going to do? Nothing. But 10 minutes today, tomorrow, the next day, over the years and the years and the years, all of a sudden I've gotten 3 extra years on my competition because I've committed to doing it every single day. I feel that's what all the great ones do, whether it's Michael Jordan or Kobe, Tom Brady. They're doing a little here, a little there, and they're stacking it consistently.
I heard you made me think of when Israel this morning said, be the standard.
Yeah.
Right. And I hear that in what Jake's, reflecting on in terms of, that aggregation of marginal gains. In the end, that is the difference maker.
Oh, big time. And I mean, be the standard to me is the best single piece of advice that I've received in my life, right? I think it transfers to everything I touch and involve myself in, right? It's like when you're the standard athletically, you can't be cut, right? And that was the context that was first given to me. Like, if you're the standard, they're not going to cut you, right? You're the guy that's like, every play. And that's what also drove me to make sure that I knew the playbook in and out, back, front, all the positions. You could call any play. I could tell you what the end, the nose, the three technique, what everyone did, right? It's like that mindset of being the one that's just a cut above everybody else, right? Being the one that showed up first and left last, right? And it correlates to now we're in manufacturing and doing other things. Just be the standard. And what does the standard mean in this new sector or industry? It applies, and Jake said exactly that. It's like the lessons learned through sport, I mean, they just correlate to every aspect of our lives.
Did you feel like there was like a healthy anxiousness that came with that too? Like where you're like, oh, I say I want to be the standard. Like, oh, I better.
Yeah.
There's there's a little bit of anxiousness that goes through your mind. I better be first.
There's some pressure.
I better
that.
not mess up.
Yeah.
I better not fall short.
For sure.
I'd say I want to be the standard.
Yeah. And it's funny because, specifically when we'd run sprints, I'd always want to be first. And I remember we drafted this second round draft pick, Dan Bazine. And I'm the guy that always just came first. And I think over time, you guys just always knew I was going to run hard and come first. And we drafted this kid, Dan Bazine. And let me tell you something. It was like, he pushed me so hard that offseason because when we ran, I could just hear him in my hip trying to beat me and pass me. And like, now I'm really running, And so the pressure's on, especially if you try to make that like your keystone, like what you stand on. Folks come in and they're going to kind of test, right? It's like, are you going to, when pushed, be the standard or so there's pressure there, to your point, to continue to show up, rain or shine, as well.
Dan Bazine.
Oh my goodness. He was like a Terminator. Right?
I'm like,
not the most athletic guy.
Jacked though, right? He was jacked.
He was a big guy. Yeah. He was big. But let me tell you something, when it came to running, he wanted to win. And he's just, he never panned out, I think, just for health reasons.
Central Michigan, bro. Michigander.
Dan Bazine.
Oh, my gosh. 2007.
Oh, man.
Oh, man, what a special year. You made me really happy that year. That's the Bears. Watching the Bears. That was a great season. Round 2, pick 62.
Yeah, our second round draft.
Out of McBain, Michigan.
Yeah.
Shout out to my guy, Dan Bazine.
Yeah. I mean, just a great guy. In that offseason, when we signed him, I mean, we ran hard. He pushed me.
You also, when you were saying that, I was thinking about earlier when you mentioned about adding value, having value, demonstrating value, bringing value, and it was in reflection to being a great teammate. And being a part of a team and doing it for more than just yourself. Can you talk about that a little bit? Because I think what happens is, like between last night and even this morning, and I'm thinking about even tonight's event, like I'm thinking about how, there's going to be like 30 elite athletic performers in the same space. And there's a level of like self-centeredness and selfishness that must exist with your time to get to that level. And so, I've just heard so many stories of like, the guy with like the greatest gifts and most talent, most skill, sometimes was the worst teammate. Right? So when you spoke this morning around, bringing value in terms of the locker room and as a team, that really resonated for me because obviously you did both.
Yeah.
You performed at an elite level, but I also know you've been regarded and loved as an incredible teammate.
Yeah. I didn't really even understand what that meant until recently, but now I just see that in all things. Like everything comes down to like value. And we do live in a world that is self-centered in a sense. It is like, what can I get? Like, I want this. What can I take? You know what I mean? And we're almost told like that's the path, is find what can you take, when like it's like a paradox. The opposite is true. If you want this and you ask yourself, what can I give, or who can I become to be deserving of that stuff? Then it just like, you don't even have to try. You just are the person worthy of that. And it's like a magnet and flows right to you. When you're talking about learning the playbook, what's value? Knowing every single position across the defensive line, because it's a limited roster in the NFL. Yeah. Oh, we can trust Izzy. We have to have him. Yeah. Because you're so valuable. For me, like tight ends, you have an inline tight end and an off-ball tight end. And I said, I want to be both. And I would always know what the receivers would be. And I would know what the O-line has in case they wanted to do a offset play where I'm playing the tackle. I wanted to know the fullback. I wanted to know the pass protection. I wanted to know the quarterback's reads. So no matter what situation, say I get caught in the game and I'm playing the slot receiver, I'm not panicking. I'm saying, great. The slot receiver might get the ball on this play. And once I catch it, they're going to say, we need to keep Jake in there. And it comes down to adding value and being the person worthy of more opportunity, and then being prepared for that opportunity. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy at some point.
Can we pivot to briefly the conversation around the things that you were thinking about while you were still playing? Mm-hmm. While beginning to think about the long-term vision for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
You know, like, and I wanted to touch on this briefly because I've admired, watching you both really transition from the locker room to the boardroom of sorts, right? And it's been a lot of fun watching both of you. You've gone different paths, although you've been on TV a ton. Yeah. Actually, I always forget that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
3 years, yeah.
Like
Well,
number 17 thing Israel Idonije done since he retired.
I was the NFL analyst for Canada for 3 years. And
nice.
I did Fox Chicago Bears 2 years.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it was fun.
It's like forever ago, feels like, right? And you think of all the new things you've done. Yeah. But maybe let's, share with some of the listeners, like, what were the things that you were thinking about while you were still putting the pads on in the locker room, envisioning the next steps that you would take on that roadmap of your life?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think for me, that takes me to, I used to do an all-star football camp in Chicago for like 250 kids. One of my sponsors, Moon Oink, which is gone now, a big grocery chain, sponsored the kids. And after the camp one year, I happened to be with the sponsor. We were sitting in her car, and one of the former Bulls called her, and he was distraught. I'm out of money. I'm in tough, strengths, and whatever you can pay me, I will sign as many things as you need me to sign, just like I need something. And she hung up that phone and looked at me and said, Izzy, as much as we love you, when you hang up your cleats, there's going to be a new number 71, and that's the player that we're going to bring out for stuff that will pay. So just understand that, take advantage of this platform while you have it. And it was just being a fly on the wall for that conversation was just so riveting. And I just knew, hey, I got to figure out what life is after football before I hang up my cleats. And that was really the driver behind me starting in real estate, starting my manufacturing business, and just really kind of delving into a number of different things. The most important decision I made was finding a mentor. Finding and seeking out guys who were already there and just saying, hey, can I grab dinner and can I get some time? And just being around the energy of made men and guys who were already there, and understanding how they think and process and move and conduct themselves, and just absorbing some of that and ultimately applying it to how I wanted to be when I became, on that status or on that level. And for me, I've been so fortunate to have a great team, to support me through all my ideas and all the things that we want to do. But the difference, ultimately has been, being able to start early, right? Like while I was playing, I made a lot of mistakes. I couldn't imagine having been retired and made some of those same mistakes. Would have been, you know, mission critical. But because I started early while I was playing and took time every week just to like invest in my life after the game, by the time I hung up my cleats, we were already in full tilt. I already had a team of 30, 40 people that were working for me. You know, I think they were a little frustrated, like, hey, go back and play. Like, stay out of the office. You know, because like,
yeah. Hey, by the way, you don't need to know.
Exactly. You know, but that one moment at that All-Star football camp was kind of the catalyst that really drove me to be in the pursuit of like knowledge and understanding and be a mentee to like someone who could help level me up and accelerate my growth as an entrepreneur and as a businessman ultimately.
I like that, being in the energy of made men.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Like, show me your circle, I'll show you your future, right? Like,
exactly.
You brought that mentor-mentee relationship up, and it's I'm excited to begin getting exposed to that, and I hope that that's the direction, like, you know, society goes as a whole, because we know the value of that as athletes.
Yes.
You know what I mean? We know that, and then you're retired from playing. Most people probably never have a coach again in their life. Right. And it's like, I want to humble myself and learn from someone. I want to expose myself to people further along in the path than me. And then one day I want to give it back.
Right.
Like Joel Klatt is the lead analyst for Fox. I'd give that guy a shout out. He spent an hour on the phone with me telling me how to call a game. Meanwhile, it's the Michigan spring game. That dude's a husband with kids, and he took time out of his day to say, look at it like this, answer all my questions. It was amazing. I didn't know what I wanted to do when I hadn't really thought through like post playing, you know, but I kind of just like thought of this concept of like planting seeds. I just wanted to plant seeds, you know, like plant a seed by a river with sunshine, you know, where it's nourished and it'll just, if it could sprout and maybe I'll pluck from it one day. So like, to me, I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I believed I could do anything. So I would just treat everybody well, you know. I would show up early to lifts. I would stay late. I would mentor the freshmen. I would do good in school. If, you know, the academic counselor asked me to do something, I would do it, because you just never know when you may need to draw on that, and that's your reputation over time. Right. And inevitably, when I retired, you know, I was playing with the Bears for like a week. The GM at the time, I think it was Ryan Pace, like gave me the pre-draft sheet. He said, hey man, you know, this is who you are. I really want you to see this. And it was like 3 paragraphs of what they had on me coming out of the combine. None about football, about how I was viewed by my peers, my coaches, my teammates. And it like got me choked up a little bit. Just, I never reflected. And that was a great point. But I knew if that's who I am as a person, I can do anything. And that's who I can continue to be. I also, you know, I was fortunate to be injured, you know, at the same time. Like I was faced with the end a lot sooner than I would have liked it in a perfect world. Having torn my ACL for the second time in the bowl game, wondering if I'd ever play again, playing and then tearing it again and then tearing it again. I'm like, okay, well, this is going to happen sooner. And there's great value in, you know, I had got an insurance settlement and I never touched a dime of that. You know, I heard about Rob Gronkowski, lived off his marketing. Same with Marshawn Lynch. Do something today that your future self will thank you. You know, and that was 7 years ago now. I'm so thankful I made some of the financial decisions that I made. And now I can say, what will 10 years from now when I'm a dad, what can I do today that, you know, the dad Jake will thank myself for, and the grandfather Jake will look in my grandkids one day and thank myself for. It's a good, just a frame of mind that I've been able to adopt because of some of the challenges that just, it continues to come up and be applicable in so many different ways.
When you're of the, like, both of you are big thinkers, very abundant and generous with your resources and your time. When your inboxes are consistently receiving requests, how does Manny Amezcua get on your schedule? Right? Like, what does it look like? What does the decision-making process look like? Because I sometimes think about, you know, some of the young men that we know mutually as friends, you know, they either say no to everything or they say kind of yes to too much. And I'm wondering what's the balance in the middle and what's kind of a good approach or system for saying yes or no to things when you're just so overwhelmed with people's desire to want to be in your presence.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. That's a great question.
Which is a beautiful gift, mind you, right? No complaints.
Yeah, I think it's depending on phases in your life, right? I think when I was in the phase where I was trying to absorb and learn, I was the say yes to everything guy, right? And being at every event, I don't care what it was, I always felt like, ooh, that was the value, that this is what I was supposed to receive something from this thing, and I learned something from this thing, or I even got an introduction from somebody that was there that was more valuable than what they paid me to come do that for, or maybe I didn't get paid at all, right? But like I always was just, there's nuggets of like opportunity in every interaction. And I think early on, I was the yes to everything guy to the point my team would be like, you got to slow down at some point, you know, but I was hungry just to level myself up. And as I've leveled up, I've been more intentional about philosophically, we're going to say no to everything. Mm-hmm. Like, it's just going to be no. Like, it's just no, it's just, we can't do it. The exception being folks that we consider family, right? Mm-hmm. Your family. So it's like, you need something, whatever it might be. All right, yeah, we'll do our best to be there to support you. But for the most part, I'm entering a chapter in my life where it's like, hey, and we love what the people in our circle are doing and what our friends are doing and their friends are doing. But for where we're going, we just need to capture some of our time back, capture our energy back, and slow down a little bit, right? I've found that every yes, you will find more opportunities to say yes down as you go down that path. It's like you go speak at something, there will be 4 or 5 additional speaking opportunities that come from that one thing, right? And you know, so at some point, I think for us all, we have to really be intentional about what those yeses look like. And it's not necessarily about all monetary gain. It's really about just your time, right? Mm-hmm. And the value of your time and how you want to apply that value to the other things in your life that are really important, you know, and that's kind of where I am in my journey now.
Yeah, you get on my schedule just because of who you are as a person, you know, and there's a lesson in that. You're a great person. And, you know, if you needed something from me, I'd be there just from getting to know you, period. And that's true for other people that mean a lot to me in my life. For me, I feel like I've adapted it's kind of fun to be curious and like explore a little bit, like what is my limit, you know? But I also am okay with having tough conversations, which means sometimes I'll say yes to something curious. And quickly I say, maybe not for me. And I'm okay to then have that conversation with someone to say, thank you for the opportunity, and have to address it in the future if I know that comes up again and I know I can't do it. But, you know, I recognize that sometimes there's like something that there's a part of me that, you know, likes to be comfortable, and I have to push back to saying no to something because it's easy. There's a balance, you know, and I don't know that I'll ever be perfectly balanced. Sometimes I'm going to over push and I'm going to have to deal with some discomfort, and I believe I'm capable of that. Sometimes I'm going to say no to something, look back at it and say, probably should have said yes, and I'm okay with that. But what I've learned by trying a bunch of new things, you know, I did that dancing competition. I'm not a dancer. I can't dance. But in that nervousness, in that newness and the excitement of it, I felt a lot of growth, and I felt a great reward by saying yes to something I otherwise wouldn't have done that. And that principle has showed up time and time again. I don't have a structured, you know, a structure on how I would deal with it, but I approach it with curiosity and with that mindset.
What's the coolest gadget in your life right now that you're all about? You're completely obsessed about, and somebody should hire you as an ambassador of the product. I know you talked to us about the 8 sleep. But is there anything else that you're absolutely obsessed about right now that you got to tell the world about?
I think it is that 8 sleep. It's got to be the 8 sleep.
30-second commercial on the 8 sleep, and I'm coming to you next.
Yeah. There's no return greater than having a good night's sleep, period. And it's, you know, I'm a bigger dude. I sleep with the house at 65 degrees. It's freezing cold. This is a mattress that I sleep on, and it pumps cold water underneath me. So it's like sleeping on an ice pack. And then in the morning, you know, you want to get warm under your blankets, it'll heat you up in the morning to wake you up. And it tracks your sleep and gives you real-time feedback to say, you're doing the things you need to be doing, or you aren't. And I can't lie to myself about it. So it's a great product. I've had it for just under a month now. And it's like, I'll tell everybody to get it. You know, it's awesome.
Hate sleep. Izzy.
Man, I mean, I'm trying to think. I mean, I think there are a few things. First, you know, just a few weeks ago, AT&T went down.
Yes.
You know, if you were an AT&T, you know, subscriber, you can call anybody for like your whole first part of the day. You know, I have a satellite radio. You know, I'm a little bit of a doomsday prepper. So I have the satellite radio, but no one else I know has one. So I want some of my friends to get these satellite phones and radios.
Oh man, I'm
So
getting
when things get a little wild, right? Who knows where this world's going? We'll be prepared and we'll be able to contact each other, and
I'll get one. So and you can have my number.
We'll have a
all right?
plan.
I'll be the only one with another satellite phone.
How many hours did we spend that day at lunch talking about?
It's weird to be off grid, farmstead.
Yeah, he's like, let's do it. He had the whole thing like mapped out on the table.
We're
at
gonna
the
do
restaurant.
it. We're gonna do it. And you know what? It's like insurance. Just in case, if we need it.
It's like,
I mean, you'll come there. We'll have our own water source. We'll have places to live. We'll have all our own food. We'll have rabbits, chickens. Like, we will be able to live off grid for months, self-sufficient.
Samantha, don't listen to this episode. It only took 6 years for Bitcoin, right? What else besides the satellite?
Then it's for me, like, what I'm always most excited about is crypto, specifically Bitcoin, right? If anyone who knows me knows that since I've, 2017 invested in Bitcoin at like $2,000 a Bitcoin, I feel like it is the greatest wealth generating opportunity for our generation. Like it is the opportunity. So there's a little bit of education there, although that friction is getting less as the world and traditional finance starts to embrace this as an asset class.
Yeah.
But the ability, there's only 21 million Bitcoin in existence. The ability to own a full one or a fraction of one by the end of 2025 is going to be very difficult, and it'll only just get more difficult, right? But it's an asset where you owning it are taking your financial freedom in your own hands. So for those who don't know anything about Bitcoin, do a little bit of research. If you need some help, let your boy know. I got you.
Who was that guy that talked about it going from, what was it, 5 billion to 150 billion within 5 years?
Maybe Michael Saylor.
I can't remember.
Maybe.
Okay.
But I mean, I tell everyone that I love,
your boy.
I tell them, buy a little bit of Bitcoin. It just whatever level you're at, get a little bit. And thankfully, it's really done well for everybody thus far. So
Yeah.
I keep pushing it.
Even that was Uncle Izzy, a bunch of thank you.
Oh yeah.
I
I told Manny about it like years ago, and he fought it, and I don't know what made you switch
How many
your mind.
hours did we spend?
Oh, we spent probably 3 hours outside, and I'm pushing like, you got to get Bitcoin.
After a 4-hour dinner. We have dinner for 4 hours. We didn't even get to crypto until I was walking across the street to my hotel room, and then we just stood on the street for 3 more hours.
Like, it's gonna be the best investment you'll ever make. Trust me. He didn't do it. He didn't do it.
Atlas and Avis did?
Yeah, but he got
Ava?
some.
Yeah.
He finally got some, and it's been epic.
Yeah.
So it's always great just to see people that you love, just having success, right? It's like, it's been great. So
it's a fun thing to learn about too.
Yeah.
For why it was invented, and
Yes.
you can go into. It's really fascinating the history of money and monetary policy. If nothing else, it's a fun subject to learn about.
Last question. Simplest thing that you see happen consistently in society that you're just like, why do people do that? Simplest thing that you're just like,
To be rigid in your mindset, to say that I know I'm wrong. I know there's things that I believe in today wholeheartedly, that I believe them to be true, that will be proven to be wrong at some point in my lifetime. I think that causes a lot of problems. That's probably one of the biggest ones right there. If you can just be fluid and see that there's oftentimes more than one right answer to a lot of things. If you can accept the fact that most people are doing the best with the information that they have. I don't think I would not say most people are actively sabotaging society as a whole. If you can accept that, I think that would, from a human connection standpoint, cover a big bunch of it. It will help your own your perspective, your external perspective will be changed by how you view the world internally. So I think that to me causes a lot of problems.
I think riffing off that, you know, I know that we are all more similar than we are different. And I think such a simple fact that's missed between cultures, people, individuals, there's these ideas and philosophies and concepts that folks hold so dear, and they feel like, oh, I'm different than that group or that person, and that breeds this hate and this just destructive energy between people, right? And when you realize, like, we are all the same. We are all the same. We are all the same. And what you're going through is what I'm going through. What I'm going through is similar to what you're going through. And you know, I was fortunate to be a part of a healing circle. It's where you get people sit around together from all different walks of life, and you share stories. And what was so riveting about this is we had folks from the inner city with police officers, with professors, I mean, just you name it. And as folks shared stories, the outcome of that healing circle was someone from a completely different world to say, wow, when you explained your father, he was exactly like my father growing up, right? Like, and you start to bring down the walls and the barriers and realize, like, man, we are all on a shared journey, this thing called life. And the things you're battling with, although different from mine, they're hard and they're challenging. And mine things are hard and challenging. And we're in this thing together, and we're the same. And you know, rather than fight each other or push each other, like, if we lock arm in arm and work together and fight together and build together and love each other, like, we will have an amazing world, right? And you know, so I think just the simplest thing that needs to be fixed is just that mindset that we're in silos and that we're different.
Yeah. You you made me think of something that I was literally just having this conversation with my study group within the industry, because it's very relevant and applicable to our industry, but it makes me think about how it's just really evident in society in general. And it's this idea that for me to be great as a financial advocate or steward to the individuals and families we serve, somehow you can't be great too if you're in the business. Like, I've got to be greater. I've got to be better. You must lose. You must not get the client. I must get the client. And I want to connect it with some data. In our industry, approximately half of the adult population in this country that has an income and dependents at home says, hey man, I'm completely underinsured. I need more or a bunch of life insurance because I don't have any or I don't have enough, right? So about 1 out of every 2 adults. Right. When you look at people age 50 and older, the number one reason they don't have a set retirement date is because they're afraid of the number one thing, and it's 4 out of 5 people 50 and older are afraid of running out of money in retirement. So we're in a financial security crisis, we're in a financial stability crisis, we're in a lack of financial success crisis, and yet, you know, companies put down other companies, advisors put down other advisors, advocates put down other advocates, and I'm kind of like, man, we're nowhere close to meeting the need that society has. And so I wonder if we could just be more collaborative and abundant and say, hey, let's just all get better together. Let's all get better together. because there's so many people that are suffering. And, I mean, you understand the financials behind it, but stuff like that and, lack of food and lack of it, it's all cyclical, generationally cyclical, that it impacts the next generation, the next generation, the next generation. So for me, I'm just always, I think sometimes puzzled as to why there's this sort of like, I have to win, you have to lose.
It's
in
false narratives.
Anything.
False narratives, yeah.
The need and demand is in almost every industry,
Yeah.
not just financial literacy.
Right.
Food, schools, medicine, education. Like,
Endless.
talk to me about something that we don't have a void in, a need. And anyways, it's kind of just puzzling and frustrating, and it always makes it. Samantha's always like, "Why are you so hard on Ava and Atlas?" And I'm like, because the world is on a weird trajectory, and I have no idea what it's going to look like when they're our age.
Yeah.
You know, and so they've got to be ready for that. Yeah. So,
And how you make the world a better place, scarcity will lead you. Having a scarce mindset and believing in scarcity leads to division.
Mm-hmm.
And it's good to be competitive and want to win. That's also human nature. It's a beautiful thing. You'll lose anyways along the path. But for you to talk about the industry as a whole, I'm going to die one day.
yeah.
We'll all die one day. We'll all pass on.
Yeah.
But if you can put your arm next to your competition and say, I still want to kick your ass, but let's make sure the world is left a better place on that.
Someone should be taking care
That's a
of it.
legacy.
That's right.
And it goes on and on.
Yeah.
I agree.
Love that.
Amazing.
Appreciate your time. This is great.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Appreciate it. Nice work.